here we go again. This will be, when I upload this will probably be the second video, the second one I've uploaded. I've been playing around with this and taking lots of small videos and snippets and stuff, but this is the second one that I'll actually be able to put up, I think. Okay, and hopefully all the features are working properly. Last time I noticed the time, it said it was 3 or 4 a.m. And obviously that was not the case. Okay, so the big news at the moment is that most most families do, most likely, we bought a campervan. We were looking around, and this is all part of the big, greater, overwhelming plan. So we had a look around at different ones, and we looked here in Japan and in Australia, and the price difference between Japan and Australia is amazing. What we're getting in Japan compared to what we would get in Australia, there's no comparison. Where you know, probably what we intend to do is use this for the meantime. Then when we go over to Australia, we're going to ship it across as well, and we'll travel around Australia a bit in the campervan, visit relatives and whatnot. Okay, this is it, the campervan. The kids come optional. Not sure if we'll take them. Chauffeur.
I'm up here.
Front can seat 3. Automatic transmission.
Am I up here?
There's a Serena up here.
3D time.
It's not 3D really. Philip, don't. The chauffeur's decided to drive us somewhere.
Oh yeah. Good. And this campervan.
Lots of storage. Yeah, it's pretty new, huh?
We buy this.
The sink, the cooking station, fridge, power.
We buy this one. We buy this house. This campervan. Hey,
cup holders everywhere.
I thought you were in the closet. Let's pretend we bought this.
Okay. There we go. In other news, I've started reading, well, I've read snippets of Apollodorus before, but I'm actually reading from start to finish his whole biblioteca, the library of Apollodorus. Which is basically a huge collection of all the Greek myths. That includes, you know, the Iliad, the stories of Hercules, all sorts of things like that, all put in one single book. Much the same way, I suppose, that you know, various redactors and collators went together and put together the Old Testament. Although the story behind the New Testament is a bit different, but you get the idea. It's kind of an anthology all together, which is nice and very interesting if you're aware of those things. Thank you. Yes, Apollodorus. In fact, what he did is he went around and basically copied and summarized all these different stories. And some of those stories don't exist anymore, so we only have the copies from Apollodorus. But fortunately, by comparing him, what he's written, with the other works that we know still exist, like the Iliad and the Odyssey and so on, it turns out he's a very accurate collator. So we can be fairly confident that when he reports these other myths that we don't have copies of anymore, he's doing a good job and we can generally rely on them. That's the importance of reputation, I guess. Okay, so it is a very reliable, very useful collection. But there's a couple of interesting, mysterious points to do with Apollodorus himself. Now, when we think about ancient authors, a lot of the time, the actual author of a work, their life, will be well documented as well. Thucydides, Julius Caesar, and so on. We know them very well. Others are a bit more shrouded in mystery. So, for example, the poet Homer, alleged author of the Iliad, we know next to nothing. There are rumors in the ancient times that Homer was blind, but really we can't say for certain anything about the author, except that he lived a long time ago, even if it was a he, or just one person. Okay, and when it comes to Apollodorus, we notice a similar thing. Now, the name Apollodorus is given to him when some other people mention him, but it's referring to Apollodorus the grammarian, and he lived in about maybe 200 BC, 180 BC, around that time. Okay, fair enough. And that seems like an educated guess. Much the same way as, for example, the New Testament Gospels, if you've heard of them. They've all got names attached: Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Of course, those names were just put on there later. They were assumed. Maybe they were popular with that particular church or something. So Apollodorus' name is put on this, but the actual Apollodorus, the grammarian, he wrote this collection called On the Gods, apparently a 24-book series that was basically rationalizing the development of gods. Allegedly, we don't have a copy of it; it doesn't exist. And what we do have, the library of Apollodorus, is certainly not that book. Okay. A couple of other things come to mind as well. Apollodorus, or the author of the library, I'm going to call him Apollodorus anyway, doesn't give any clues really about himself, about who the actual collator is, and he reports everything in a very dry way without commentary at all. One thing that we do have is he mentions Castor, a Roman, who came later on. Actually, when it comes to Romans, that's another point about Apollodorus, but he does mention this person called Castor, who lived a couple of hundred years after the old Apollodorus. Now, that's interesting. What's also interesting is that the other ancient authors don't seem to have noticed that Apollodorus even existed in the ancient world. In fact, nobody mentions this particular work or makes any comments about it or its author until the 9th century. Long after. If it was a Greek writer, well, of course it was written in Greek, and the Greek seems, judging by the different word endings and the frequencies of various words, it's a date early in the 1st or 2nd century of this era seems perhaps likely. But during that time, Rome was the big power. Rome was huge and everywhere, and everybody knew Rome, and Rome's influenced everybody. Except, seemingly, Apollodorus, who even when the heroes in the myths travel around Italy and would go to Rome, and even in some of the other myths we know they did all these deeds in Rome, Apollodorus skips Rome completely. Now, is that a subtle way of saying I don't respect Rome? or was he just living out in the in a farm so far removed, a farm with a well-stocked library? I don't know. The presence of a very good library, which he obviously used to copy all this, suggests that he wouldn't be far out. And then necessarily he'd be influenced by Rome, but completely removes Rome from being mentioned at all in the library. Maybe he was just a Greek nationalist, full of national pride. But there you go. So that's Apollodorus' library, and I'll be reading that and getting through that. Basically, I was looking at the works of Hercules. Hercules, the Latin name we give to Heracles. He's been in a movie recently, which was interesting. But I've been reading up about him, and I'm looking into the comparison between him and, for example, Samson, and there's an Irish hero as well who did very similar things. So maybe I'll have something else to talk about next time. But in the meantime, who was Apollodorus? I don't know.